Hi and welcome. I'm Ray Andrewson, the General Manager of WQUN in Hamden, Connecticut, along with WQUN News Director Greg Little, joining you tonight on the Pete Mezzetti Show, a little different format. We're going to interview two people very familiar to the Pete Mezzetti Show, specifically Pete Mezzetti. Pete Mezzetti, welcome to the Pete Mezzetti Show.
Ray Andrewson, thanks for filling in and being Pete Mezzetti tonight. And good evening, Greg Little. How are you?
Thanks for having us. I'm good. How about you?
I'm great, thank you.
And it's good to have you here along with Chris Morgan, who is, of course, the person who's in charge of a lot of the operations as community access programmer and director here. Chris, good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thanks for having me.
And why are we doing this, Pete?
Yeah.
Because we can.
That's right. Pete Mezzetti can determine what he does on the Pete Mezzetti Show.
Exactly.
We thought it would be a great idea, specifically Pete did, that we actually take you behind the scenes and get a chance to talk with Pete and Chris about how we do community access television, this program specifically, all the people that Pete has interviewed over the years, and we've had them as guests at WQUN before, in both the news department with the Reporter at Large, where Pete has been a guest with Greg, and also Chris has come along with Pete before as guests on the WQUN Morning Show.
So Pete, what makes your show unique?
I'd have to say what makes my show unique is because us, like WQUN, we're very community orientated, and like I said when you and I did Reporter at Large a couple weeks ago, I try to stay away from the political aspect of things, and I try to remember where I came from as far as keeping it local, reaching out to your local nonprofits, and getting the word out on your local community events.
And you hope when people watch your show, they learn, correct?
Oh, absolutely. I hope when you watch the show, you at least learn one thing every week.
You know, it's remarkable when I think about all the shows you've done, because we have done so many at WQUN over 22 years.
Yes.
But you've had to coordinate hundreds, thousands of shows over the years.
Oh yeah. Well, like we were talking about when Greg and I did Reporter at Large. I've been with Valley Shore Community Television 6 years.
It'll be 6 years this summer.
6 years this summer. And before that, I was with Comcast out of Clinton for 15. So I've been doing this for almost 21, 22 years. And I've interviewed local mayors, local first selectmen, local heads of state. I'd have to say one of my most notable is Dr. Lee, the forensics expert, that when we did that when we were back in Clinton, at the Clinton studios.
I'd be curious, did he leave any fingerprints?
No fingerprints.
No? Okay.
Nope.
That's good. Chris, what do you do here? Because I think your role also to help and assist Pete, you work as a tag team together. You guys are partners.
Yeah. Well, my official title is a public access coordinator, but I wear a lot of hats here. I do everything from maintaining equipment to recruiting volunteers, doing a lot of outreach to get the word out about our station. It's hard to believe it's been almost 6 years this summer since we opened. It goes by so quick. This was run by Comcast before we started about 6 years ago in July of 2013.
And did you get all your training in college, and was it different when you came here? Is it easy to adapt? Are the cameras different? That kind of technology thing?
Yeah, I started a lot of my training at Haddam Killingworth High School. In fact, my teacher, Chuck Lewis, is our executive director here. That's where the connection, that's where I came from when this place opened. But Chuck's done a tremendous job up at Haddam Killingworth with their TV production program, and then from there I went to Western New England University up in Springfield studying communications. But a lot of it you learn on the job as well. You know, classrooms in the classroom you learn a lot of concept stuff, how to write for broadcast and how to, be on camera, how to edit video and everything like that. But a lot of the specifics is unique to your own plant, your own station, and that equipment you pick up on the job.
Yeah. Well, I'm amazed at the community focus that you both had doing all this over the years, and the commitment. Pete, you are known well beyond the borders of this studio. You've had state office holders on. You've had senators. You've had governors, lieutenant governors, state representatives, state senators. The whole gamut of politicians, but you're not political. It's not a program where people tune in or watch here and they they don't know your bias. They don't know where you come from. You actually are looking at them as just office holders.
Exactly. I like I said before, we try to keep it local. I try to get out and support your local nonprofit organizations. If you're doing a road race, if you're doing a community event, if you're doing a bake sale to fund something, but it's one of the aspects of public access and doing the show over the last 20 years is that I enjoy is just getting out in the community, because what people don't know is if you're a local nonprofit or involved with a local nonprofit, me as a public access host, I can basically be one of your best friends just to get the word out and on what's going on.
Is there any kind of collaboration between you two? You seem to be such a good team working together, have a lot of camaraderie.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Pete was one of the first shows that started producing when I first started working here. So it's probably, as far as the shows we do today, is the first one I've worked on at Valley Shore Community Television. Of course, Pete had many years prior to that over at Comcast. That's before I was here.
That's right.
But in addition to Pete's show, we work on probably almost a dozen different programs that tape here regularly. One of them that comes to mind that dates back to at least as long as you've been taping with us is Mark Kostwich's Shoreline Music Monthly, which is a monthly local acoustic music show. A lot of singer-songwriters from the shoreline all over the state of Connecticut have come down. He's done a show every month for the last 6 years now that spotlights a lot of great talent on the shoreline.
You know, it's funny, you were talking about the apolitical nature of everything too, but tying a community together. It's hard to dig up guests, I think you'd agree, because people they want to commit, they want to be on your program, Pete.
Yeah.
But sometimes logistically there are challenges.
Oh, yeah.
Because this is, even though it's a small state, it may take 2 hours for somebody to come down from the state capitol or some other place. So I gather you have some regulars on, but also you try to branch out with somebody new from time to time.
Absolutely. I do have a vast array of regulars, but every once in a while I'll throw somebody new in the mix as well.
Yeah.
Chris, you mentioned the musician that was on here. What other kind of shows are we seeing?
Well, in addition to the music show and Pete's show, we do a show called Looking Back that's hosted by Marianne Pleva, that's a resident of Essex, and she brings in a lot of lifelong residents of some of the towns around here to tell the history of the area we live in. There's so much history in all these towns, whether it's the fact that Essex was actually a battle site in the War of 1812. I mean, that's not something you learn in a history class.
Right.
It's super local, and to hear it firsthand from some of these folks. There was another one that was the story of Eleanor Roosevelt spending time right here in Westbrook over at the Salt Marsh that's now the Stuart McKinney Wildlife Refuge. Oh. And all these local stories that you bring to light and get to showcase just makes it a blast. You know, it's so interesting, and that's what's kept me going for the last 6 years, because there's something different every day.
Yeah.
So what is it about this area, that you both can answer this question, that is special? I love to ask people, what is it about your town, what is it about your community you find special or unique? Sometimes you'll get an answer, well, the people, and well, honestly, people are people everywhere.
Yeah, right.
So what is it about the shoreline? What is it about the history of Essex, or the lower Connecticut River itself, Old Saybrook, the North Cove, beautiful places like that, shoreline, and this facility right next to Water's Edge here on the Post Road. What do you find unique about the towns?
What I find unique about the towns is just the different in seasons, because you tend to see different faces in the fall than you do in the winter, and then the summer people show up, and it's a very eclectic group of people that show up throughout the year.
Well, I grew up in Higganum, and I still live in Higganum, and I know now, having worked here in Westbrook and we cover 9 different towns, all the way up as far as Haddam and Durham, south through the River Valley to Chester, Deep River, Essex, all the way to Clinton. And I find it most interesting that every town has its own character that I didn't realize, growing up in Higganum. I visited all the towns that we now cover,
right.
But I didn't know what makes every town tick. What they all just have a little bit of a different vibe. it's really interesting, I think.
This is a question for both of you. Favorite guests? I know you mentioned Dr. Lee, but
Okay.
someone else besides Dr. Lee?
I would actually have to say one of my favorites that I had on with me not long ago, and you remember this show,
I do.
Lou Nescott,
Oh, yeah.
who climbed.
Yeah.
Lou Nescott, who was an adjunct professor with Quinnipiac University when he climbed Mount Kilimanjaro.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. He did that on behalf of charities.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
That's
I
right.
think for the Sarah Foundation here on the shoreline. And he's an inspiring guy. He served
He
also
is.
tours of duty in Iraq, in Afghanistan. He has Noesis, a political consulting group, so he follows a lot of the world events. I mean, he's a fascinating guy.
Oh, yeah.
A high
Very
energy
high
guy.
energy, yeah.
You know, the joke we had is that he was going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, and he might keep climbing when he reaches the summit because he has that much energy. You know, that's just the way he is.
Right.
Yeah.
What about you, Chris?
I don't know. There's been so many that have come through the doors. I mean, they're all interesting, too. I don't know if I could really pick one.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the way we are too.
Yeah, that's true.
It's
Well,
difficult.
Radio and television, and the radio is sort of theater of the mind, but you have folks here in the studio as well. What I like is in your introduction, there's some familiar faces, of course, who are on the stand here now, but also you have dogs jumping, and you have demonstrations, and you have batons twirled and majorettes, and so you're very involved with the schools. You're very involved with the high schools. You mentioned Adam Killingworth, and as a native of Higginham, Chris, but the schools come here as well.
Oh, absolutely. I actually do social media for the Morgan Boys lacrosse team, and we have after the season's over, I'm going to have a couple of my leadership guys on, and we're going to talk about the lacrosse season at the end of the season when it's over.
Yeah.
Sounds like community, community, community all the way around, right?
Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
totally.
Yeah.
So, community access television, we talked about this when you were at the radio station a while back, is actually, like a lot of media, going through some changes. And one of the sad parts about the cable industry now, there's a movement part from the FCC to have a not must carry. So support your cable community access, please, folks out there. We want to make sure that this stays as a community presence and doesn't go off traditional cable. And we are concerned about that. If some people are not familiar about it, Chris, you may want to explain what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Not to go into too much of the details, there is a proposal by the FCC that would basically almost in a roundabout way zero out the funding for cable access providers nationwide, not just here. So it is a great concern because, you know, it's always changed over the years. A lot of things that we're doing now are moving towards online. You really don't need a cable package to get access to us thanks to the World Wide Web, but that's where all of our funding comes from. So without the cable subscriber fee, there's no funding to keep the doors open and the lights on for cable access providers all over the country. So we have to try to innovate and stay current, and that's always a challenge, but we're doing our best to make sure that we're here for many, many more years.
Yeah.
Is that before Congress, and how soon do you expect a decision?
It's actually not before Congress. It's the decision of 5 commissioners of the FCC.
Okay. Not Congress. Okay.
Although Congress, I believe, can have an effect on the outcome of it. I don't know much of the legalities of it. And I'm not exactly sure when that should come out. I'm assuming in the next year, within the next 12 months, but that's all we know at this point.
And Pete, you've innovated. You have a media presence apart from cable. I mean, so you recognize early on, you have your own website, your own media site where people can access you.
Exactly. People can actually go to the website, which is petemezmedia.com, and they can look at the website and see exactly where they can find me, because I'm very easy to find as far as if you want to go watch online or listen to a podcast, and everything's there.
Well, it's all there, and I'm glad that you used the word podcast, another change in terms of our technology with respect to both radio and television as well, which is very important. And, you know, we've been doing our show for 22 years, as we've alluded to, and Greg and I have been partners in the morning show for 21 years. And we've seen a tremendous amount of change. And the technology, Greg, I think you'd agree, that we see on radio also applies to Chris and Pete for television. There have been changes here in the studio.
Yeah, when I first started in radio, you would have alligator clips that would go from your recorder into the phone. You'd unscrew the phone. And now, as you know, you can do interviews on your phone and email sound cuts back to the radio station, video too. So the technology is really unbelievable.
It's tremendously different. So just a couple of seconds here before we wrap up this portion here. And you are been doing this now in 2 locations, 15 years in one, 6 years in one. What's your future, Pete? What are we looking forward to in the next couple of years?
Hopefully doing the same thing. Hopefully doing the same thing, asking questions and getting out in the community and promoting local events.
That's great. And Chris, your future here too?
Yeah, same thing. I'd like to see the station thrive over the next upcoming years and hopefully keep it around as long as we can.
Okay, well it's great. This is certainly a different way of doing things that we've done here in this program today. And I want to thank you for being a guest on your own show. How does that work? Are we taking a break?
We're going to go into a break and come back again.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay, I saw, it's funny, this isn't radio.
No.
So when I just saw this nice gentleman put up a sign that said wrap, I thought he was asking for my dinner order.
No.
They serve wraps here? Is that what you do? You feed your guests?
That's what I'm waiting for.
Oh, we're doing a break. So
we're going to go into a break and then come back.
Is that how they do this?
Yes.
Yeah.
So they don't do this like sign anymore. Is that
Nope.
antiquated? Okay, I thought that was like wringing towels out.
No.
So we are okay.
The
So
wrap.
we're going to take a break,
And
if
then
you
come
will.
back.
It could be a wrap, but it could be a break. And how do you like your wrap? Is it spinach wrap or plain? We're going to
Tomato basil.
We'll be right back with Pete Mezzetti and Chris Morgan, Greg Little, and I on Pete Mezzetti Show. Stay with us.
Kids will spend 15 minutes watching online videos like this one.
Brushing for 2 minutes now can save your child from severe tooth pain later. 2 minutes, twice a day. They have the time.
Oh, look, a redhead. Staring contest. You still got it. I know.
Come alive with the forest.
The dad was cute.
They were looking right at us.
Visit discovertheforest.org to find a forest near you.
And welcome back. It's the Pete Mezzetti Show, but Pete is not hosting today. I'm Ray Andrewson, General Manager and Morning Host at AM 1220 WQUN at Quinnipiac University. And also Greg Little, our News Director, is hosting Pete's show. Pete is the guest today as his talking about the history of the Pete Mezzetti Show, what he does, how you can come on as a guest and access Pete. Also Chris Morgan, who is very heavily involved with our Valley Community Television here as Program Access Coordinator. Did I get your title right? I got it backwards.
Public access coordinator.
Public Access Coordinator. Yes, a lot of the same words too. And just before we went into the break, we were starting to talk about the future and where you're going with this. The technology has changed, but there must be some people that you haven't had yet, types of shows that you haven't quite had yet. So without giving it away, if you had a crystal ball for the next year or two, some ideas that you might be cooking on, some other topics you haven't covered.
Yeah, right.
It's a secret. Don't watch.
Don't pay any attention.
Guests don't know yet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, my guests don't know yet. I would have to say maybe the Lieutenant Governor of the state of Connecticut, Susan Beisowitz, or maybe Governor Lamont, maybe Richard Blumenthal. I've interviewed Kevin Lembo over the years, who's the comptroller for the state of Connecticut. I'd have to say one of my frequents that's on with me is Congressman Joe Courtney.
Yes.
In that area.
Yeah.
I noticed, Pete, that you don't have a pad with questions. I'm sure you must do research, but you just keep it all in your head. And,
It's all in
and
my
do it
head.
That way. Yeah. Wow. And
then
you're not afraid to book any guests, right?
And then if that gets lost, I don't know what I'm going to do.
Well, it's hard coming up with guests, as you know. I mean, in the sense that you're intellectually curious, but you don't. You have to book them.
Yeah.
And you have to be on time. You have to make sure that you honor your time during the program and you show up and you're there for the allotted time. I always have to ask you this too, because this is a very relaxed setting for television. We're in casual clothing, and that's the beauty of local community television.
Right.
But I'm sure you've had people almost dress up in tuxedos and gowns. And then there must be the guests who've come here in sandals just off the beach.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow.
I wish we brought our sandals and came here. That would have been.
Didn't the police chief do that because he thought it was a radio show?
He did actually. The first good point. Vin DeMeo, who is the Clinton police chief, because he's been police chief in Clinton for two or three years. The first time I interviewed with him, he thought we were doing a radio show.
Yeah.
So he shows up in a golf shirt, flip-flops, and shorts.
Wow.
And he sees all this. He's like, I thought we were doing radio. I'm like, no, we're doing television. He's like,
It's like, uh-oh.
Surprise.
he's like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
So we did the interview like normal. I actually saw Chief DeMeo not long ago, and he was in uniform. He was like, I actually brought sunglasses with me to keep the beach theme. I'm like, all right, that works.
That's perfect.
Is there industry news where you stay up on things and maybe take ideas that you'd like to implement here?
You mean like
Yeah.
networking with other stations?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're actually part of the Alliance for Community Media, both locally and actually we recently just joined the National Alliance for Community Media that allows us to share a lot of ideas with other cable access stations. Out your direction, North Haven Community TV and CTV in New Haven, Wallingford, Nutmeg up in Farmington, and we not only do we share ideas with stations like those, we share programs. So Pete's show airs up on Nutmeg TV. It airs in Middletown. I think is there any more where yours air?
No, I think it's just Nutmeg.
And there's certain programs that other stations produce that we are here because we have 24 hours a day, 365 to fill.
Right.
And I don't know any cable access station that can fill all of those hours with original programming on their own. But it allows us to also bring in quality content from other neighborhoods that may not otherwise get seen here.
Right.
So it's a win-win.
So I have a concept of a show.
Okay.
Yep.
There's the Pete Mezzetti show, and if I were, say, interested in cooking or golf or history, books, book reviews, how would I go about getting on this program and this wonderful facility that you have here?
Sure. Yeah, so our facility and resources are open to anyone who either lives or works in any of the 9 towns that we cover on cable. Anyone interested in producing their own show can give us a call at 860-399-1857 or send us an email on our website, bsctv.com. And they can come down and we'll train them on all of our equipment, our cameras here in the studio. We also have field cameras they can take out in the field and record a local parade or a soccer game or your kid's concert or anything from the school. And we also have editing systems where you can put together a segment and make it look like something that's done at a professional station. So we provide the equipment, the resources, and the training for you to produce your very own TV show, and it can be just about almost anything. We have to be careful when it comes to anything commercial in nature because it has to be nonprofit or community-oriented content. But other than that, it's pretty much anything you want it to be.
So if you don't have training and you walk through the door, how long does it take to learn how to operate all this stuff?
For the studio, we do training in 3 different workshops. Usually, collectively, they're about 4 or 5 hours together over the course of 3 days. And after that, it kind of gives you an exposure to everything we have here. And then usually I'll recommend that somebody interested in doing a show here in the studio will shadow a show like Pete's or one of the other studio shows that's done here so they can kind of get a feel for how it all works.
Sure.
When it comes to out in the field, some of it you kind of learn as you go on your first project. We use a product here called Adobe Premiere for video editing, and you can't learn Adobe Premiere in a semester-long college course, the whole thing. It's so complicated, like Photoshop and all these other computer programs, but you can get the basics down in a couple hours. And so that's what we try to teach is, so you can find your way around And after that, on your first project, you really start to hone in those editing skills and you get a lot better at it.
So you get, in the course of your time, Pete, of doing the shows, you start off 21 years ago, and then you, of course, have been with this facility for 6 years. You evolve with the technology, too, because you have to be aware of what they can do to help you behind the scenes.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And before, 21 years ago, did you just come in and say, I'm going to do a show? Did you have training? And did you just, how did that evolve?
No, well, I didn't have training. It was actually very funny, and you and I talked about this when we were in the studio together doing Reporter at Large. And how it happened in Clinton was, I think you might know this story, but I'm going to tell it.
Yeah, I think
anyway.
I've heard it before.
You've heard this story before. Is when I was in Clinton, I had to stop by the Clinton studios to drop something off, and the public access coordinator at the time says to me, hey, you know something, that the town of Clinton doesn't have a community affairs show. I said, okay, that's very, very interesting, and went next door to my meeting. I was going to the town hall to a meeting. Then first selectman at the time, Willie Fritz in the town of Clinton, I mentioned it to him. He walked on the other side of his desk, looked me in the eye, shook my hand, and said, congratulations, the project's yours.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that was the first thing. As a matter of fact, when we first shot the first pilot, when we shot the first episode of the show, he was my first guest.
Perfect. So it's not just the show itself, but you also advocate on behalf of other agencies.
Oh, absolutely.
And you have been involved professionally with Ronald McDonald House.
Absolutely.
And other organizations around the area.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of my biggest and my favorites is the Ronald McDonald House of Connecticut and Western Massachusetts.
Yeah. So advocate for volunteerism, because that's what you do, and you advocate for many people, not just to come work here in Valley Shore Cable TV to learn and operate the equipment and come on here, but you want people who are volunteers to continue to volunteer. I mean, you've been expressing that with many of your guests over the years. So
Exactly.
Explain volunteerism and what it means to you.
Volunteerism and what it means to me is a great way to giving back to your community, especially it also gives you the opportunity to learn something that you might not know.
Yeah.
And Chris, you rely on obviously volunteers to get this whole thing done too, right?
Absolutely. Everybody here except for 2 of us are all volunteers tonight, including Pete.
Yeah.
When you come and ask me for a raise every year, I said, well, take 10%.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, we would not survive without volunteers here.
How hard is it to find volunteers?
It's becoming harder every day. I think back to like when I was in high school and I would volunteer to videotape football games and basketball games for the cable access station. And I worked on the weekends as a busboy. But today, some of the high school kids are into so many different things, whether it's sports, whether it's an after-school job, and sometimes to find time to volunteer at a place like this is a little bit more difficult than I feel like it was maybe even 10 years ago. But we have a great group of volunteers that keep us alive, and I couldn't thank them enough for all they do.
Yeah. Well, we're getting down to about a minute or so, just a little over a minute left in this program. I think I can speak for a lot of other people in this area to thank you both, really, for your commitment in doing this. When you start to add up all those programs and filling 24/7 all those slots, it's remarkable when you think about how difficult it is. And just as a news director, Greg, you know how difficult it is to get newsmakers to return calls. These are busy people, they're officials, they have other priorities during their day. So you kept at it.
It's not an easy thing, and I commend you both.
Yeah. So just a couple of seconds here that we're left. And now I asked you earlier before the last break about the future plans and where you're going to be going. But in about 15, 20 seconds, what have you enjoyed most about all of this?
Meeting all the people that I've had a chance to interview over the years.
Yeah, that's really great. And Chris, for you?
I would, not to just copy, but the people and the variety. I mean, it's in TV and in radio, you see it's something different every day. It's not sitting at a desk and being a pencil pusher all day long. I mean, I like the change of scenery, and I like seeing all different people that come in here, and you always learn something new from everybody.
Well, it's great. Well, it's an unusual show for sure today. We want to thank our guest on the Pete Mezzetti Show, Pete Mezzetti. Thanks for coming
Thanks,
to your
Ray.
show. Will you come back to your show again and
Absolutely.
be a guest?
Absolutely.
We hope so. And a host as well, we hope.
Yeah.
Keep up the good work. It's
Thank
a
you,
joy
my
to
friend.
be here. And
See you
Chris
soon.
Morgan, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And Greg Little, our news director.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
And Greg Little, our news director, and me, Ray Andrewson from WQUN. Thank you so much for watching the Pete Mezzetti Show. Tune in again.